Everybody, this is the live stream version of the Bold Business Podcast. And these are my favorite ones to do because it's the one thing I'm doing right now. So after this, when I eat lunch, my lunch is going to be my favorite thing to do. And after that, I'm going to come back and I'm going to optimize some videos. And John is going to be my favorite thing again. John is going to be my favorite thing twice today. So just so you know, you are here. You are in the right place for conversations on how to increase your capacity and the capacity of your leadership team. This is important because when we don't look in the mirror first, and we don't develop our own skills, we can't meet anybody else where they're at. So this conversation is all about the skills we need to be resilient, not only as individuals, but also in our business as leaders carrying the visionary torch that we do. All right, my guest today, I've already let his name slip once, but that's all you know about him. So now you get more. John Davis suffered a serious back injury that left him paralyzed. He developed his 5F system of achievement because of this. The system hacks the fight or flight response that we all face when we're stressed out now and again. And here's the thing, it allows us to shorten the learning curve and increase more successful outcomes over time. Using the system, he regained his own mobility and he went on to perform 4,000 live comedy sword fighting shows. I even practiced that one and I still am like, sword fighting, you're right up my alley. And then not only was it 4,000 live shows, it was across 16 countries around the world. John is known as the corporate action hero. And you can find him online at corporateactionhero.com. How are you doing today, John?
I am doing great. What a great introduction. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this. This will be fun.
I'm really glad. And I have to tell everybody who might be joining us for the first time who I am. Otherwise, they're just going to think I'm some crazy funny lady. And really, in addition to the Bold Business Podcast, my name is Jess Duell. And I am a strategic business advisor at Red Direction, where we provide unique, customizable frameworks that are designed for leadership teams to fail faster and bounce higher. Okay, so getting into what I do best, which is asking questions and being super curious. John, what does achievement really look like?
What does achievement really look like? Well, achievement to me is I set goals and reach those goals. So achievement to me is taking present moment action and dynamically getting to what I set for myself.
When you do that, and I'm thinking about this like holding up the mirror, this holding up the mirror piece, because I think that's key. We have to know what success looks like for ourselves. And if people think they know what success is, but they always feel like they're failing, do they really know what success is?
Right. The interesting thing about that question is that for me, success is freedom. We're free to have be free from debt, and we're free from living in a dump, and we're free from being in a bad relationship. So if you're living a life where you're free of all those things, then I know a lot of people who set a monetary figure, but they're not really free because they're a slave to get to that number, right? And then they get to that number, and then they're still not happy because they don't have all the other elements in play. For me, success comes about, and achievement comes about, is when you feel more and more free. And so freedom to me was an interesting thing because, as you said earlier, I was paralyzed, and to free myself from the bed was a huge achievement for me.
And it's interesting because you're right. And especially in business, we do think about success or achievement being associated with a revenue number. And that's necessary. In business, that's necessary because we're trying to employ people. We're trying to make sure we have product to sell to people. We're trying to make sure the right people know about those products. And all of those things take money. And what I'm hearing you talk about is that, of course, that is necessary because that's how our world works. And we've all decided what our income stream, where we add value so we can create income, so we can go spend our income and make the world a better place and make our lives a better place. And so I think one of the things I'm thinking about with this concept of freedom is that if we can shift the way that we look at revenue from a business, and maybe this is even personal financial goals too, if that becomes a result instead of the driver, how do things change, John?
Well, and that's interesting you say it that way because the result is the driver. We all set goals for our future, and sometimes those goals are monetary numbers. Sometimes those goals are reaching the next level of sales. Sometimes it's literally keeping the lights on too. Sometimes that's the
Yeah.
goal as well, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea that level that you're trying to achieve is out there. That's a goal. You're going to set the goals. But the thing is, it's fascinating, and this is something that I learned the hard way. um,
Oh, I love
um,
this.
right. Great successes never magically appear in your present moment. The only way they come to you is by you making small, successful present moments right here. And so by living in this present moment and looking at that goal and thinking I have to get to it, you're actually making it mentally harder to get to, because in reality, it's the small, successful present moments that you make here that achieve the big goal, because the big goal is being pulled to you by each one of those little, tiny little things you do that you make successful.
So then we have to even understand that we are having success, because it's each
Right.
one of those things that we're doing that gives us the momentum to keep going and sometimes to power us through. I mean, in my world, if I don't put on lipstick in a day, I'm having a bad day, because like it's a really bad day, because it doesn't matter what it is. I will always put on my lipstick and I will always keep going, because the momentum from yesterday and the momentum from where I've been and my drive to be calling myself forward is what gives me that to get through those tough times. And, I think we often overlook those present moments and actually
Right.
seeing what they are, not only as opportunities, but as a kind of achievement. How do you reflect in the present moment to know this is my success, or here's the success of this moment?
Well, this moment is the only moment that you're conscious anyway. It's the only moment that you can do thought, word, and deed. Your past experiences are now stacked in your subconscious mind as memory. And those memories have subconscious belief that are giving you ideas and beliefs. And like I said, your future is just a place where you set present moment experiences. Now, the thing that I see is people in this doing their present moments, and they're making them successful. Every so often, they mess one up, or they do it wrong, or they have a problem like that, and they go, "I'm so dumb," and they start beating themselves up. That's why I'm bald. It's because I did that for years, right? Right. So um, the thing is, what I had to do was I had to come to a place where that moment where I mess up is not another moment to waste in self-defeating talk or beating myself up. Instead, I just go, no, that's silly, and I do the next present moment. So I make even my bad moments fun, because if I do something dumb, or I do something that doesn't feel right, I laugh at it because it's funny. And here's why it's funny: because I'm going for a goal, and this thing I just did doesn't match the goal, so it's just silly that it happened, because you're going for your goal, right? You're making that
Oh,
goal come.
absolutely. All right. Well, that's interesting, because I agree with you about the past, but for a whole different perspective and a whole different viewpoint, because I always live in the future. So even
Mm-hmm.
in this moment, I am straddling this moment with the future. And I look at the leadership teams that I work with, and some rely on the past to figure out where they're at now. And some, like me in general, rely on the future to know where I'm at right now. And we forget to be in the right now. And
Right.
so that's actually something in the last 5 years or so that I've really put a lot of attention on is I thrive in the future. I want to know what's coming next. I want to see what is out there to go find. And I can't forget exactly where I'm at, because not being present here means we might miss the turnoff on the trail, means we might miss the I'm going to call it the wild strawberries that we might find along the journey that we could stop and enjoy by a river, right? There's so many things that we miss. So I look at the past and the future as a place of strength to bring back, to ensure I'm as present as possible here in this moment. And by the way, that literally just takes practice. And it seems, almost to your point about Maybe I'm not bald yet. I'm surprised I'm not from some of those things that I do.
This could be genetics too, for all I know.
Cracks me up. All I know is that I think that when we think about our goals and by the way, and life is going to happen. And so if we are looking at this world in relationship to what's happening to us instead of how we're showing up to the happenings, I think that makes a difference too. Don't you, John?
Absolutely, though. But the one thing you have to remember about your future, your past, and your present is that there's only one of those three that you can actively do something. There's only one of those things that you can take thought, word, and deed, right? And it's the present moment, right? You can't go to the store next Thursday right now, and you can't go to the store last Thursday right now. You can only go to the store right now, right? So you have to take this moment and make it truly active. As I said earlier, that giant goal that you set that's out in the future, it's great. It is great to dream and plan and create, but all that dreaming, planning, creating without present moment action is just dreaming, planning, and creating. You've got to have the action for it to be coming into fruition and into reality. And the thing is, when you're dealing with teams and you're dealing with the teams that you're trying to bring up to another level, you have to realize that you have to get them very present, and you have to get them doing present moment actions so that they can develop successes. That past experience that we talked about, which is very, very unique in the fact that that subconscious belief that I talked about earlier is really one of the most prevalent driving forces in your team's experience, because they have past traumas that have diminished their beliefs. Sometimes they have past failures that have diminished and there's some who've got these great successes that have a different belief, right? But if they're driving from these subconscious beliefs in the present moment, they're just repeating those subconscious beliefs yet again, that same experience. So you got to break them free of the past or the future enough. You have to stay in the future and to have the goals and the dreams, but you have to stay in the present enough to make things happen. And the cool part is when you make these successful moments, you make a lot of them, your subconscious mind completely changes. You literally alter the subconscious mind, and your life gets great because now it's an autopilot.
Isn't that fantastic? And you know what? I can give you a real life example from this morning of not being present in the present moment, but taking action and having it go a little awry. I was putting an English muffin into the oven so that I could take my kid to school and come back and have my breakfast, okay? So my tea was ready to go, everything was ready to go. But I'm listening to my son tell me all the things he's doing and getting around, and he's headed out to the car, and I'm slicing in my hand with this knife, this English muffin. I cut myself on the other side. And you know what? It was silly. And I was like, oh, well, that's crazy. So I've got my English muffin in one hand. I've got my other hand up high. I've got to get it in the oven, and I've got to get a Band-Aid on before my son gets worried that he's going to be late for school, because he's a social butterfly like his mama and wants to get there as early as possible. And so I get in the car and he goes, "We're already late." And I said, "Hey, you're still putting on your snow boots, and I even got a Band-Aid on my cut before we had to actually leave the garage. So let's be right here, right now." And so it starts early, people. One of those things is, are we always looking to what's next? Or can we see, to John's point, what is actually here right now? What can we use, and how are our reactions and responses to that actually reinforcing what's between our head?
Right. Exactly. And you're always going to have people in your life who are going to give you what you should think about your life and what you should think about your experience. I had a doctor one time tell me, "You're never going to be a stuntman. You're never going to be a fight director. You're never going to do those things. You're never going to have a physical career." And I could take his belief and stop. Or I could say, no, I'm taking my own belief and move forward. And what I did was I went on to do over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting shows all over the world, including the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan on 6 USO tours. I've worked with movie stars. I've jumped off towers. I've been on fire. I've done all kinds of physical things that most people will never do in their entire life. And I did that all after the doctor told me I never would. And it literally is about leveraging your present moment. And set your goals. Absolutely. For me, I had to set the goal that I was going to be a stuntman and a fight director. I had to set that goal, but I had to hold on to that goal. And when I held on to that goal and didn't let anything stop me is when I achieved that goal.
And knowing what to do first, I think, is a big part of that. Where am I? Where am I going? Because we can't look and rely on a skill we don't have yet. Otherwise, we're setting ourselves up for failure and a lot of head slapping.
Right, right, right. And
right?
that just gives you headaches. So why do that?
Why
You
do
know?
that? I
Right,
know. That's
right.
no good. I know. Running into a wall repeatedly too is also ill-advisable, I think, in the grand scheme of things. So do you come with the thing that says, "Don't that should be part of your signature here. Don't try this at home."
Oh, that would be good, wouldn't it? Don't
Well, that would
try
be
this at
super
home.
good. I love that. Yeah, you're the
Well,
kind
when I
see Go
go
ahead.
ahead. When I do my speeches, I use bullwhips and nunchucks in my speeches, and one of the things that's so interesting, and I think you're going to enjoy this, is when I do my main corporate action hero speech, I'm talking about leadership, and I'm talking about how you guide others from where they are and take them where you want to be. The word leader means that you're leading, not dragging, and so and so
Right?
you need to. Right, right. So you need to make sure you're going there, meeting them where they are, and bringing them where you want to be. So I go out in my audience. I choose the most timid person I can find to come to my stage, and I bring that person to the stage. Now, I know the first fear they have is being in front of their peers, and sometimes that's thousands of people, depending on the stage I'm on. And first thing I do is I bring them on the stage and I say, thank you so much for coming. I start giving her positive reinforcement with head nods, right? Thank
Yeah.
you for coming. And then I turn to the audience and say, isn't she a rock star? And I start getting positive reinforcement to her to feed her up, right? So then I say, I'm going to teach you a simple skill today. I'm going to teach you the best way to cast a fishing rod. And I start talking to her from a place of calm and serene, because what happens next is I pull out a bullwhip and I hand it to her. And okay, so now she's holding a bullwhip, right? And I keep saying, it's a fishing rod. It's just a fishing. I'm teaching you fishing. That's just a prop, right?
Yeah,
So I
that's
start talking to her about fishing rods, because I don't want her thinking pain, danger. Her mindset, her attitude. In your business, your weakest link will always be your weakest attitude. And so if you can find your weakest attitude and fix it, you can solve a lot of things right away. So I get her thinking about calm, serene, casting fishing rods. I get the audience members on the side of the audience that she's facing to make fish faces. They put their hands underneath their chins like this, and they flap their gills, and they do fish face like that. And what happens is she's laughing. She's having a good time. Right.
Yeah.
I'm keeping her out of the place that she's holding a bullwhip in her hand. Then I say, now what I want you to do is I want you to choose which fish you hate the most. and that gets her to laugh. Right. And I said, just cast your fishing rod. And she casts the fishing rod, and guess what happens? The bullwhip cracks, because it's the same motion, and it cracks. So then I say, all right, so now you know how to do that. You've got a skill. You now know how to crack a fishing rod. So now let's try something here. And I pull out a target, and what it is, it's a pretzel rod like you buy at the store. And I hold out a pretzel rod. I said, and the first thing she sees is that I'm holding a target. Now, she's seen me earlier in the show take a target out of somebody else's hand. So now I'm holding this target, and she's like, so I know as a leadership that she is now in a fear of hurting me. So I say to her, I said, look, did you hear it crack? She said, yes. I said, so you already know how to make it crack. I start nodding my head. You already know how to make it crack. Yeah. So I'm now giving her positive reinforcement. I'm also shifting her timeline from learning the skill to knowledge of the skill. Once I get her shifted into this new timeline, then I say to her, and I quote, I promise you're not going to hurt me. Sometimes when you're leading somebody through something stressful, you got to lie to them. I'm kidding. My job in that moment was to meet her where she was and to bring her where I wanted her to be. Yep. So I had to understand that her fear, the thing that was stopping her, was her fear of hitting me. And so for me, I had to literally say, take that fear away from her and say, just look right here and cast your fishing rod. And the next thing she does is she cracks the target out of my hand without hurting me. And she does all of that in under 5 minutes.
Yep. That's right.
It's just a matter of correctly leading her from where she is rather than where I want her to be.
I think that part takes time.
It does take time.
Right. And that's, I think, where most people, and let's think about it, right? We set a goal. What do? We try and jump to the end really fast or shortcut our way through. And you know what? If we have help along the way, like what you're talking about, somebody that can guide us through this to understand the basics of what we need right now to keep moving forward quickly, I think is key. I also think there's another piece I heard you talking about, which is, well, somebody's got to do the designing. And if it's not me, the person in charge that's asking everybody to follow them, who is it?
Right, right. Well, and the thing is if you're truly a leader and you want people to follow,
Yeah.
then you have to demonstrate a couple of things. Number one, you have to demonstrate your respect for them,
Yep.
because I have asked audiences all over the world what was most important in their life, and I have never had one audience member say my job.
Right.
They always say my family. That's number one, right? And so
Mhm.
if I can demonstrate to them that I care about, them and their family and their purpose, and I can then communicate to them how what we're doing for the business is going to help them and their family, then
Mhm.
what happens is they are more engaged and they take ownership of the business.
That's
They
right.
take ownership of their job, right? So I've talked to so many companies that foster that competition environment,
Right.
and I watch them all collapse. I watch all those companies go away because when you create competition between your coworkers, you're creating a cancer within your organization, and it's just going
Right.
to disintegrate into nothing. Foster that positive work culture, that positive environment.
Mhm.
What's really interesting, and I've seen a huge shift over the past several years. Speaking, there's a huge values based shift in the corporate world,
Yeah.
and they're all coming back to this values based. And I spoke for the Dwyer Group, and
Mhm.
and have you ever heard of the Dwyer Group before? They
I have heard of their name, but I don't know much about
Okay.
them.
The Dwyer
Mhm.
Group is one of the largest franchise companies in the United States.
Yeah.
Mr. Rooter, AirServe, all these companies are underneath the Dwyer Group. And the Dwyer Group has a value system called the Rich Value System: respect, integrity, customer focus, and have fun. That's their value system. And when I was at their national conference, they call it their annual family reunion, is what they call it.
Oh, that's
And
great.
I went and I was sitting at the bar that evening and I was talking to all the franchisors who had their businesses with them. And I said, "So why did you choose the Dwyer Group?" And they said, "Because of the rich value system. It
Mhm.
made them feel good to be part of
Yep.
that sort of environment." It's the same sort of environment you need to instill in any business if you want it to be successful.
True dat. And it's funny because during that time where it was in one pendulum swing to the other is kind of when I started showing up, and I've been talking about values forever, and I'm like, why am I the only one? And then to your point, very recently there has been a little bit of a shift, and it's like, oh great. And I'm like, thank you, thank you. And
Mhm.
right before we remind everybody who we are and what we're doing here, John, I wanted to say that I think that it's really important to know who we are and why we're here in this present moment.
Right. It's key to everything.
It is key to everything. And it's
Right.
necessary because how we don't know what forward is if we don't know where we're at,
Right.
is
Right.
what I hear you saying a
Right.
lot.
Well, it's like GPS. When you put your destination into your GPS, it gives you directions to start from. So, you
That's
know,
right.
but the first thing you have to do is type the destination in before you can get the directions.
Exactly. All right, you're listening to the live stream of the Bold Business Podcast, and we are talking about achievement. Achievement, not only in times of despair, not only in times of high stress or uncertainty, but also in everyday life where we can have fun, enjoy the ride, and actually build a better future by being right here, right now. I want to do a shout out again to our amazing guest, John Davis, for being here, for sharing his knowledge and reminding us that we really do have the power already within us to do what we want to do. We just have to start. And with that in mind, you overcame a huge obstacle. And I have a question for you. Did you have your 5 F's of achievement before this happened to you and you applied them, or did it come out of your forward momentum and desire to make your own reality?
It was born out of my injury. My injury is an interesting injury because it was actually a condition I was born with, and I didn't know I was born with it until I was 22 years old.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah.
yeah, I was already well on the way to becoming a stuntman and a fight director, and I was going for my black belt in Taekwondo, and I was very very fit. And back in those days, I had long Fabio hair. Thank you very much.
Ooh.
Ooh, yeah, right. And, but this isn't a bald head, man. This is a solar panel for a love machine.
Right?
Anyway, right. So,
It's a different kind of chic, this look
yes,
today.
exactly. Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah.
So 22 years old, a buddy of mine says, "Hey, can you come help me unload my van?" He was a professional potter, and he had a van that was filled with 80-pound boxes of clay. And I got out to his van, and I in my mind, I'm thinking it's just another workout because I was really fit. When I climbed up in that van, I picked up that first box and I turned to set it outside of the van, and my upper body literally disconnected from my lower body and I collapsed. And they took me to the hospital and they told me that I had a condition known as spina bifida occulta. 3 of my vertebrae right above my pelvis never formed properly at birth. And with the extra 80 pounds in the twisting motion, I literally clicked my spine in two and pinched off my spinal column. And the doctor told me flat out, you're done. No, there's no stunt work. There's no fight direction. There's none of that stuff. And while I was lying in that hospital bed, someone, and this sounds like a cruel joke from by somebody, but somebody came in and gave me a gift. And the gift he gave me was called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, a book written by Bruce Lee. So it's a martial arts book at a time when I couldn't do martial arts, right? But as I read that book is an interesting thing because that's his philosophy on martial arts. And what I did not know is when Bruce wrote that book, he was in traction and had just been told he'd never do martial arts or lift weights again. And he did every movie that we ever knew him for after that. And so this book was very apropos at the time. And so I latched on to one element in that book, mental flexibility and staying very present. Those two things, actually. So by deciding that I'm going to be flexible and I'm going to leverage my present moment, I then started to build towards my goals. Over the course of time, I started studying neurolinguistics and hypnosis, and I started studying how the brain comprehends and achieves things. And then I started putting it into practice and started noticing it in others. So I was on the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan, and I talked to a soldier and I'd get his piece of the puzzle. I'd talk to a stuntman. I'd say, what's your piece of the puzzle? And slowly but surely, these 5 F's of achievement came together. And what the 5 F's does is literally hacks the fight or flight response and puts you on a path where you are achieving more in the present moment than you ever thought possible. And then your goals come to you twice as fast, just like that young lady with the bullwhip in the show cracks it in under 5 minutes just by following these key steps.
Will you share 1 or 2 of them with us?
I'll share all of them if you're
even
if
better.
You're a go.
I wasn't going to be greedy, but I really wanted to. Thank you for being, amazing and saying, "Why, let's do them all."
Well, I tell you what, I do podcasts to be of value because the word action means to create motion, start momentum, or to do something. The word hero is the most important part of that. Hero means as a person who achieves extraordinary results in service of others. And so I deliver value whenever and wherever I can. So I love sharing the 5 F's because I know if they never hear me speak today, someone may get the 5 F's and be able to implement it in their life and create extraordinary results. So before
you begin, by the way, everybody, this is why John is on our show. From listening to me and the way that we do this and how we're different from other podcasts, that this is in full alignment with that. And from the very beginning, when I first was learning about John, I was like, well, this is it. This is it. And now you've heard it from his mouth too.
There you go. Nice.
That's
nice.
Right.
and when this is all done, I'll give your audience the gift of the 5F workbook. And I say gift, it's free, which means you don't even have to give me an email address. It's a place you go and download it. Okay, so let's get into it. So the first of the 5 F's is something called fearlessness. Now, that's the toughest part for some people. But the thing is, when people are in fear, the first thing they have to do is label it. They have to set their fear and go, okay, I'm in fear. Once you label fear, you're no longer inside of it. It is now external and you have control. But if you allow yourself to sit inside of it, you're stuck. Now, how do you release it? Now, here's a little simple trick you can use. And this is based 100% in the fight or flight response. Have you ever watched National Geographic shows on TV?
Yes, absolutely. Love them.
Okay, so you know that one episode with the gazelle?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of episodes with gazelles.
They're all with the gazelle. What are you talking about?
I think I know what happens next.
Yeah, that's my one joke about the National Geographic Channel.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all with the gazelles out there eating the grass in the field. Suddenly, the predator cat hits the field. The first thing the gazelle does is go and gasp for air. Right. That is a natural primal response that every animal on the planet has, including humans. If you're a parent, if you've ever seen your child almost do something and hurt themselves, you know that you have gone, oh God, right? You had that moment, right? Well, most people, when they're in fear, they think they can't breathe. Well, it's not that they can't breathe. It's that their primal response is holding as much air as possible in their lungs so they can run further and faster. Actors on Broadway are trained that if they forget their lines, they are supposed to exhale and relax all their muscles. And when they do that, it shuts off the response, and immediately all their lines rush back into their head because it shuts off the survival response and puts them back into cognitive thinking. So if you find yourself in a place where you feel all tense in the chest and your shoulders a little bit raised and you feel afraid or uncertain or negative, take that moment and just go, and suddenly you're going to have a much clearer thought process. So that's the first one. But you have to also have to remember the fear is not present in your present moment. Fear is rooted somewhere else. And the interesting thing about that is fear, when you break it down scientifically, is an emotional reaction to some future event that may or may not happen with you focused on a negative outcome. And that brings us to the second F, focus. Fearlessly focus, right? Once you get focused on a negative outcome, have you ever bought a car before?
A few.
Did you choose what kind of car? Did you ever choose what kind of car you wanted before you went to the store to buy it?
No.
Have you ever bought a big ticket item or actually, better yet, when you bought your car, did you notice you started seeing lots of that same kind of car?
Yes, the answer to that is absolutely yes, but not until I decided that's the one I wanted.
There's the key. Once you decided, right? So your conscious mind chose something. Your subconscious mind kicked in to help you achieve it. That's the other element of your subconscious mind, right? Negative people are constantly looking at negative things and looking for negative things because they are focused on the negative and their subconscious mind is showing them more and more negative things. So if you want to achieve something more in your life, the first thing you have to do is get your focus very positive. Right?
Yeah.
I couldn't focus on what the doctor said about my life. I had to focus on being a stuntman. Right? So fearlessly focus. The third one is a hard one, not the hardest, but it's a hard one. But it also is the core element of all five. When you have five, there's one middle one that holds up the other four, right?
Yeah.
And it's faith, confidence, belief. I don't. If you find your faith in spirituality, that's fine. I'm talking about confidence and belief. And so if you can confidently believe it, so you get fearlessly focused and put real faith behind it, real belief behind that outcome, right? Now's the hard one. Number 5, follow through. Follow through. It's the one. It's the one where people fall down. Well, follow through is only done in your present moment.
Yes.
Follow through is only this moment here. And you have to take this moment and you have to leverage this moment by making these moments as successful as possible. Sometimes you're going to have mess ups like we talked about before, but the reality of it is you need to make your present moments as successful as they can be. So predominantly more successful than those other moments. So just keep stacking small moments. Don't think about trying to tackle the giant thing. Think about taking the small moments that are pieces and parts of that giant thing and do that. So you get fearlessly focused with faith and follow through. And the last one is the one we actually started this conversation on, and that's flexibility. Whenever you're going for a goal, something is always going to come up that's going to seem contrary to what you're trying to achieve. It always happens, right? And in those moments, you can say, "I'm done." You can say, "Well, that's that. We can't do it now," or we can say, "Okay, this is a part of the process that I need to deal with this so I can get to my goal." Right? When you look at this thing I said about the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, that negative car thing we discussed. Yeah. If I'm positively focused on a goal and my subconscious mind shows me this obstacle, it's because my subconscious mind wants me to tackle that obstacle to get to my goal. It's part of the process that needs to happen. And you'll be surprised as a leader or a business owner how often this thing that comes up will either be incorporated into your final goal, or it'll be something that you can eradicate entirely out of the system, or it's something that you go, okay, I'm aware that's there and I don't need to do that. I just set it aside. But it literally is, you keep focused on your outcome, your goal positively. And these things that come up are just things that need to be addressed.
you use the word focus as one of your F's, and I'm thinking about that. I'm like, I need another word besides focus, because one of the things that I see that the torchbearers in a company really struggle with is trying to be all things to all people. And by the way, everybody listening, none of these things say anything about anybody else. They can come
Right.
along, they get to be part of it, they can be included, they can be held accountable, they can be invited. In the end, though, it's on the end goal. And whoever's going to come along is going to come along. And I think that's the part where we get a little stuck sometimes and hold ourselves back, is in the service of others. Or am I really being a servant leader? Or I'm supposed to be doing this to ensure engagement. I mean, we could be doing all of those types of things, which all slow us down, hold us back, and allow more negativity to creep in when we weren't even expecting it or thinking it. Because as soon as we accommodate something like that that has negativity, now we have negativity all the way through. And what I've been hearing you say, John, is that we've got to focus on not the negative, the positive, the opportunity.
The positive.
We have to know it. We have to accept it. We have to recognize we might not be able to avoid it, but that doesn't have to be what we put our attention on.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. And you have to realize, if you're focused on something negative, you're actually focused on a fear. And because if you're having a negative response, it's a fear response. Because if you're focused on something positive, you wouldn't be in a bad mood, right? Right. So that whole concept of negative thought is literally going back to your fear. So whenever you feel negative, I want you to just go and relax those muscles, get that air out, and you let your mind get back to thinking positive. You know, it's funny. The whole idea of when I was lying in that bed, I went through dark times in that bed. You know, and I mean, I really considered suicide at 20 years old. And now here's the interesting thing is that when I started to figure this thing out and move forward, those dark things went further and further away from my experience. And, you know, and now, because I went through that process and now I understand how to hack my own personal fight or flight response, you know, now I've been a stuntman, a fight director, a comedy sword fighter, an artistic director of theme parks, a college professor, a keynote speaker. I've been inside the pyramids of Giza. I've been on top of Machu Picchu. I've been to 30 countries around the globe, and I've done all these amazing things because I know that I am the one in control of my experience. And when I'm a leader, I realize that I can help bring an experience to someone else that empowers them to take it up. One of the things I do in my speech is I pull out a pair of nunchucks and I do a really fancy nut routine all around my body. Well, the reason I do that, I use it as metaphor. You know, there's two rigid objects, and it's the flexibility in between. You know, and it's to leaders that there's this move I do called the Crazy Eight, where I'm twirling it like this, and at one point I'm opening my hand, and the nunchucks are spinning around my hand here and on the other side again. And I say, I'm micromanaging every moment. I'm trusting the systems, processes, technologies, and individuals that I have in place to do their job, so that I am not wasting time trying to control everything. I'm just putting myself in the right position and putting the people and processes in the right position to do the job well, you know. And then I've got to set back and trust them. I've got to let them, you know, and be empowered enough. And the thing is, unless you let go of them and let them have those empowered moments, they're not going to stick around, and they're never going to grow to become an even more dynamic employee or a dynamic team member. You have to make sure that you are letting it happen.
I'd say both sides are a very positive outcome. You've got that side of the positive outcome, and the other is when you let people step up and trust in themselves and show up. The ones that want to be carried along also become very obvious, and and with the way that work is done in an organization, the reinforcement of that creates an opportunity for growth by that individual in their own action, hopefully. Right? I mean,
and, you know,
let's look at the positive of that. Send them the way.
Right. Sometimes, I'll give you an example. I was directing a festival, and it was a Renaissance festival, and I came in, and I was brought in to basically save the festival because they were going under, and I had already saved several of them just by coming in and taking over. And I came in and I just started assessing the situation. And I saw this one guy who was a great actor, great performer, and everybody looked up to him. And, you know, his ego was huge. I fired him. He was the number one guy. I fired him. And they're like, what are you doing fire? He's the show. I said, no, he's not. He's not the show. We're the show. And what happened was I got rid of him. And then the 5 people he was holding in place, all replaced him. So now I had 5 of him who were not egos, but really doing a good job. The show got, 5 times better by getting rid of the person who was holding other people down.
That's right.
You've got to foster a relationship in your environment.
And be willing to take action, because by not doing that, that erodes trust. It erodes other people's ability to have faith in why they come to work every day, why they're choosing to work with us every day. And I think, and it's going to be sharp. I have to tell you, hello, John went from not walking to all of these crazy, amazing feats. It's not easy. There are sharp things. There are bad things. There are horrible days. You even heard some of that. And I can relate. I have never been in a situation quite like yours. However, I've had a lot of sharp things show up, unexpected, life-changing, instantaneously life-changing things happen. And to whatever degree that is for any one of us, when our life changes, I'm going to take this away. That's it.
Nice. Right. Let's let it brush right off of you, because the thing is, in the 5 Fs, fear is the one constant that you're going to constantly be addressing. Every time you try something new or go to that next place, your primal response is going to be assessed as a threat or not. And so you've got to think about, when I get into a negative space, even though I'm, into the 4th F, right? I get into a negative space. That's a fear again.
Yes.
So it's not that you have to start over. It's that the 5 Fs are happening simultaneously. You just have to watch how you're primally reacting. And what's cool about this as a leader is understanding the 5 Fs. You can see when someone's not breathing well. You can see where they are in the level, and you can address those moments and help them get out of those moments. That woman on the stage with the whip, I was taking her fears away. I was giving her positive reinforcement. I was getting her focused on the outcome. I was giving her faith by having her team work with her and giving her positive reinforcement, right? And then in the end, when I held that target up, I had to get her to remain flexible because some new obstacle just arose. And then even through that process, I was like, I went back to fear. I promise you're not going to hurt me. And then she takes the target right out of my hand. What happens? In 5 minutes time, she learned a skill, did it at expert level, and came away knowing that she could.
Yep.
And because I chose the most timid person in the audience, all those people who know that her is a timid person are like, oh my God, it worked for her. Right. So we're changing lives. And the key about the 5 Fs is the fact that if you're in sales, it's the same process your customer, prospect, or client is going through. It's the same process that your team is going through. It's the same process that you personally are going through. It's a natural primal response. And if you understand it, you can work as a leader, as a salesman, and even in your personal achievements in life.
You said something key about that. Regardless of the role we're in, we can show up and use this in every role of our life because we all have many of them. Our lives are like an amazing kaleidoscope. When you were talking about the person in charge, whoever that is, the person who is the one that's got to let go of all control and make sure that they've done all that pre-work, that everything is going to happen the way that it's going to happen now because all that pre-work had intentional effort put into it. That person who, I'm going to continue to use torchbearer. We probably ought to use bullwhip holder or nunchuck slinger, because I think that's also appropriate here. Is what it comes down to, though, is I think that they have to be present in the moment to recognize what's going on around them. They can't be thinking about the next meeting. They can't be thinking about the next deal. They can't be thinking about whatever is coming next, because otherwise they're missing those cues that truly allow a situation to be, to your word, leveraged, to be able to get people all there at the same time, because that's when real magic happens. And I wanted to say thank you for bringing that up, because I have a phrase called dimensional leadership. And that's what it's all about, is until we know where we are, we can't see where anybody else is. And making a shift as somebody who's ensuring we're removing obstacles so people can go do the work that they want to be doing and that we need them to be doing, that's key. And we, and in this world, coming back to the values piece, we also expect everybody to have a full-time job and then kind of develop people and then kind of manage to the next thing. And then but we all have to have this concept of work. And I think we need to shift that, because removing obstacles for other people is as important as closing a sale, is as important to keeping customers happy and support requests down, making sure there's toilet paper in the bathroom. All those things are equally important. And somehow we forget that.
Right. And that environment that you're talking about, all those things that it's an environment. That's a feeling, an emotional place that you're creating as a leader. And you're talking about, always thinking about the next meeting or the next thing. That's why they have calendar apps. Use them, because
right. That's right.
Right. Yeah. I look at my calendar every night before I go to bed and every morning when I get up, and I go, okay, this is what I got to do today. But I'm not focused on, 2 days ahead or 3 days ahead, when right here, right now, I have things I have to solve and do. And when I'm a truly empathetic leader, and I believe in empathetic leadership, I'm looking at my team and I am going, okay, where are they in the process? I'm bringing them a gigantic thing. Are they all freaked out? And if they are all freaked out, how can I support them through the process? And if I myself don't fully understand it as well, and I'm feeling overwhelmed by it, I make sure they know that. Hey guys, I'm a little overwhelmed by this as well. So maybe we'll work on this together. Now I've created a camaraderie to solve this problem or go to that next level together, as opposed to a hierarchy of here and there.
Mm-hmm. So you said you have a download for people. Where do you want people to go to get this download so they have those 5 F's handy?
Well, they're going to have to go in your show notes, because it's an awfully weird little link.
I know, it's a weird long one. Okay.
Yeah. It's like corporateactionhero.com /free_gift/.html or something like that.
I'll pull, the link will be there. We will include it all the way around.
Okay. And now let me tell you what's cool about that 5F thing.
Yeah.
That workbook starts with you finding out where you are and you're setting your goals. And so it's showing you the process so you can go through, assess your stuff, and move forward. And then you'll understand the process once you've gone through it yourself. So that's what that book does. And like I said, completely free. I don't get anything for it. But when you go to the link, you're going to be on my website anyway. Just look around. You're going to see I do a daily vlog every day. A piece of motivation comes out of me on YouTube, and it goes into my daily vlog on my website. My podcast is there, The Interaction Hero, and all kinds of other crazy stuff is there. And I'll tell you a little secret. If you want to see some really fun videos, go to the Four Planners page under the speaking tab. 4 Planners. There's all kinds of videos under there with me with whips and nunchucks, and you actually see someone with the whip in her hand taking the target out of him. Whipping her and taking the target out of him. Yeah.
I will never be on stage with you. I am not shy enough, and that's okay.
and I wouldn't choose you for that reason.
That's what I mean. I'm like, we're sharing a stage, and we could share a stage, but I will never be somebody you would pick out of an audience, because I'd be the one I'd be wherever I went. I'd be like, me.
And I would immediately not choose you.
And I want to end with that note. And that's important, because when we know where we're going, we know what's out. And that's so important to know how to go forward, because then we're going forward more.
Right. I completely agree with you. I call it being an action hero rather than a reaction zero.
And on that note, there's nothing that can top that. That is going to be the end of our show. So you've got to remember to go to the corporateactionhero.com website. I will put a link in the show notes to that wonderful PDF that you can use to pull down the 5 F's and work with them on your own. And we want to hear from you. John and I want you to join in this conversation and tell us, well, what's something that you've overcome? How did you do it? Did you inadvertently lean on one of the 5 F's? Did you come up with your own system and process that worked for you? Because the more we know about this topic from each other, the more we get to learn and carry it forward. Because it's together what we define what that resilient leadership looks like, not only for ourselves, but for the teams that we lead. Until next time.